teach the Word and to teach those things that are found in the Bible that'll help us. Our lesson tonight is a lesson actually for young people, but really all the points that we're going to be making, there are things really for all of us. And anyway, so we begin our lesson here in the book of Lamentations. Lamentations just right after Ezekiel. In Lamentations chapter 3 and verse 27, it says, "It is good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth." Pretty short verse, but a very powerful verse when you think about it. It is good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth. And so that's the title of our lesson, Bearing the Yoke in Your Youth. All right, so let's talk about the phrase there, bear the yoke in the youth. And first off, to kind of define some terms, the ideal to bear means to accept, to carry, to shoulder, to sustain, to support. That is, you're bearing, you're carrying, and accepting responsibility. And the ideal of a yoke is to suggest ideal responsibility, load, burden, obligation. And so what Jeremiah was saying, it is good to learn these lessons while you're young, because they're going to be lessons that you're going to need all your life of what we want to talk about tonight. Some various aspects. Just easier if you learn them while you're young, and to put them in practice and to follow the concepts that we're going to be talking about tonight. And so we hope all will give careful attention to what we have to see from the Word of the Lord. All right, first lesson we want to talk about, it is good to bear the yoke in his youth. That is, learn to respect authority, to be in subjection. Just very basic, very important concept to follow in our lives is to have that mindset that we're going to follow the rules. And hopefully we learn that when we're just little children. There in the book of Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1, 2, and 3, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right." I remember growing up, I really didn't go to church anywhere growing up. Used to watch Billy Graham some because my mom would have him on. We had a Bible. I'd look through the Bible and just look at the pictures, never really read the Bible. First time I ever went to church, I was in the 6th grade, went with a friend to the Baptist church, and that was the first time ever to go to church services. And I remember my mom always talking about, well, you're supposed to mind your mom and dad. You're supposed to mind your mom and dad. And I used to think, well, why should I? Well, I never challenged that because I knew I'd get a whooping for something like that, to rebel against the authority. And then when I began studying the Bible, I read this passage here in Ephesians chapter 6. And it's like, well, that's why you're supposed to mind your mom and dad, because it's the right thing to do. God says to do it. Obey your parents in the Lord. That's what it says. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and that you may live long on the earth. So if we learn to be in subjection, to follow rules, we learn it at home with mom and dad, and then we're going to venture out and we'll be in school, and we got to follow rules. And then we're going to get a little bigger, and then we're going to get into the workplace as a teenager, and you got to follow rules. And then you're going to get your license, and if you're going to have the privilege of driving a car, you got to follow the rules. And then you'll get out and get a full-time job, and you're going to follow rules. And we're going to live in society, and we have to follow rules. And hopefully all that will learn ultimately that we follow the rules of God. It's just something that we've got to do, that we have to be in subjection. Sometimes I ask the younger people, can God do just whatever that he wants? Can God do whatever he wants? What do you think, Hayden? Can God do whatever he wants? All right, Hayden says yes. Actually, that's no. That's incorrect. Can God lie? No, he can't lie. So he can't do just whatever he wants because it's contrary to his nature. So even God lives and acts based upon his nature of principles and concepts that he set in motion, and that there's rules to be followed. Look there in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3. Paul says, "But I would have you to know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God." You see, there's a functional subordination that is talked about in this text, that the head of Christ is God, and the head of man is Christ, and the head of woman is the man. It's functional order. Sometimes people kind of rebel against that. They think somehow that we're, that we're sort of prudish, that we're kind of backwards, that we're not in the 21st century, but that's what God ordained. That there is this functional subordination and order in the society that we live in. And sometimes, in various situations, that, there's limitations of what we can do. And that we have to follow the rules. And if we learn that when we're young, that's why Jeremiah says, it is good to learn these lessons while we're young. As Paul said, that it may be well with you. Why is it going to be well with you? Because you learn to follow the rules at home, you're not going to get a spanking. You're not going to get in trouble. And you get into school and you follow the rules, and so you don't get in trouble. And you get into society, you don't get in trouble. And you learn to obey the laws in driving, and you don't get in trouble. And you get to the workplace, and you follow the rules, and you do what the boss says, and you don't get in trouble. I mean, it's just, that's the way that the world turns, that, there are things that we have to do. We have obligations, and we need to learn that. And so it is good for a man to bear the yoke and the shoe. Something else that we need to learn while we're young, and that's self-control, self-restraint. You just can't do anything and everything that you want. That sometimes you have to say no. It's like, well, you can't have it. And we think that we should have whatever we want. And sometimes kids will just throw a fit of anger and just like be bullies and brats and just be totally out of control. But we need to be in control. It says there in Acts chapter 24 and verse 25 that Paul reasoned with Felix, a king. And kings, they have a lot of authority and they get the mindset that they can just do whatever they want to, but that's not true either. Even kings have to show self-control because Paul reasoned with him about righteousness and self-control and judgment to come. We have to be under control. There are certain things that we ought not to do. And there are certain things that we ought to do. And self-control says, and self-discipline says, well, you're going to do it. Well, I don't feel like doing it. Well, you do it anyway. That's what self-control is all about. In the book of Proverbs, we got several Proverbs that kind of talk about this, kids out of control. It says the rod, that's Proverbs 29:15, the rod and the reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings his mother to shame. That is, here's a child that's not following the rules and just be rebellious. Well, I'm going to do what I want to do. Well, I don't care what you think. I don't care what you say. I'll do as I please. Well, that's going to bring his mother, his parents to shame. In Proverbs chapter 17, verse 21, it says, he that begots a fool does it to his sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. Look down also there in number 25. It says, a foolish son is grief to his father, and bitterness to her that bore him. Yeah, we have a lot of kids in our society that they're just plumb out of control. They don't want to follow rules. They want to do what they want to do. The other day I seen this, I think it was out in California. They had a bunch of young kids on bicycles, teenagers, adolescents, and they did a flash mob at a store. That is, they rolled up their bikes and they jumped off and they went in and they just ransacked and took things. And it was pretty brazen because somebody was filming it, They were recording it, and it got on the news. And there were some parents, they see their little Johnny, they seen their little Billy Bob was in that. And give it to the parents. It's like, well, they went to the police and turned them in. They took their child down to the police station and said, yeah, my kid was one of them, and you need to arrest him, and you need to charge him that we don't want this to go on. And hopefully got the child's attention, the 2 or 3 parents that turned in their kids, that the kids will learn better, that no, you just can't do whatever you want. You got to follow some rules. And you have to have some self-control in your life. And that's the only way you're ever going to be happy is learn to practice auto-discipline, self-control. And everybody's got to learn that. Either we can learn it the easy way or we can learn it the hard way. It's sort of like, people say, well, you're skinny, you can eat whatever you want. Well, I can eat whatever I want. But, intemperance has consequences. My mother was diabetic, and I thought, I don't want to be diabetic. When I was a teenager, her eyes crossed, and about drove her crazy. Went to the doctor, eye doctor said, no, I don't think it's an eye problem. And went to the doctor and found out she was diabetic, bad. And she got on a strict diet, her eyes straightened back up. And she told the line the rest of her life. She didn't want that. And so I thought, well, I don't want that either. Can I eat sugar? Yeah. Can I eat ice cream? All I want? Yeah, I can eat it. But ultimately, there may be consequences. So I've always tried to practice a limitation of sweets. Self-discipline, auto-control. Didn't want to bring a problem in my heart and life. All right, another lesson that it's good to learn while you're young, and that is the value of work and labor. There in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 19, after the fall of man, it says, in the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return into the ground, for out of it you were taken, from dust you are, and dust you shall return. So here we see that the curse was that in the sweat of your face you're going to eat bread. That raises the question, was work a curse? Is that what God cursed? Work? Is work a curse? Just ask, yes or no. Yes or no. You can say yes or you can say no. No. Work is not a curse. How do we know that? Because you look in Genesis chapter 2 and number 15, this was before the fall, and the Lord God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to work it and to keep it. So there Adam was working in the Garden of Eden before the fall. So work is something that's good. It's actually something very beneficial, something that is to our blessing. Now, the curse was that in the sweat of your face, it would be hard, the weeds would come up, and, things would become more difficult in working, etc. That part was a curse, but not work itself. Work's actually a good thing. And, kids, they can kind of learn to work and to do at a very young age. It's sort of like little kids, they can go to the toy box and get toys out. I mean, if they have the capability of getting the toys out, can't they have the capability of picking the toys up and putting them back in the toy box? Well, yeah. Well, how do you do that? Well, you got to train. You got to talk to them. And maybe you might even have to, after talking and admonition, there may even need to be some disciplinary actions to kind of impress upon children that, yeah, you're going to have to put the toys back up. And then, it's like, look at these hands. When I was a kid, 5 years old, I stood on the chair at the kitchen sink washing dishes. You know what? It didn't destroy my hands, washing dishes by hand. I don't know if we had dishwashers back then. Oh, well, we did. I know we didn't have one, but I don't remember if they were invented back in the 60s, or early 60s. But I washed dishes. That was part of my job. Then you got bigger and you worked out in the yard, mowing or trimming or taking out the garbage or help folding laundry. All kinds of things. Running the sweeper, all kinds of things. Kids can learn all kinds of jobs. It is good. It's wonderful. Notice there in the book of Ephesians chapter 4, let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor with his hands the thing which is good, that he may give to him that has need. And then the passage there in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 and verse 10. For even when we were with you, this we commanded you. What did Paul command? If any would not work. He didn't say if any could not work. We had a younger sister. There were 7 in my family, my oldest sister, and she was much older, and so she lived in the country. I grew up in Louisville, and I had 5 brothers, but our younger sister, she was born with cerebral palsy. She couldn't walk, she couldn't talk, she couldn't do for herself. So that verse, not talking about somebody like my sister Tina. She was incapable of working. All the rest of us, we worked because we were able-bodied. So Paul says, if any would not work, that is, chooses not to work, neither should he eat. Didn't happen maybe once. Kids, we had 4 boys. Been around kids all my life. I grew up with 4 brothers, had 4 sons, got 3 grandsons, and soon to be 3 grandsons and 3 granddaughters. So I've been around kids all my life. I like kids. I like hanging around them. I like their disposition, etc. But you know what? Kids need to work. They need to learn responsibility of doing jobs around the house. And anyway, one of the boys, he said, well, there was some assignment that he was supposed to do. He said, I don't feel like doing it. Okay, no problem. No problem. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. Now, when supper time comes, just don't come to the table. He's like, well, okay, I'll do it. I mean, it's a simple solution. That's how you solve the problem. People don't work. That's a problem with our society and the abuse of the various government programs. It was only intended to be a crutch, a temporary help of food stamps or government assistance. It wasn't to be a way of life, to be on the draw. The idea was that you work. Sometimes there are various catastrophes that come, and so it was to be a temporary thing. But if we're following the biblical injunction, the solution is people that are too lazy, don't want to work, just don't let them eat. And somewhere they're going to have an attitude adjustment because, well, you get pretty hungry. And ultimately you'll decide, well, yeah, I guess I do need to work. So it's good for a man to bear the yoke and share. Learn the value and the benefit and the blessings of work. That's something that you'll do all your life. And then godly living, serving God. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, remember now your Creator in the days of your youth. Good time to learn while you're young. It's sort of like the proverbial saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Be so for dogs, but human beings even can learn. I seen just the other day, there was I forgot where it was. I think it was in Mexico, maybe. It's on Facebook. Anyway, there was a guy that was 105 years old, obeyed the gospel. One time I was in the Philippines. We were up in the mountains of Tanig, and there was a lady. She was like 102, and she was baptized. The first time I ever seen it personally, and she obeyed the gospel at 102 years old. So it is possible that, yeah, you can learn, but it's a lot easier to remember your Creator. Learn about God, respecting God, fearing God, and be God conscious in your life. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. You think about young Timothy. Paul says in 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 15, and that from a child. It's literally the word babe. It's used like in Luke chapter 2. They wrap the babe, and it's from the same word. And that from a child, even from a very young age, even toddlers, even before they can ever read, they can learn about God and understand that God and that the Bible is God's book and just various principles. And that from a child you have known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make you wise unto salvation through faith, which is in Christ Jesus. And where did Paul learn that, or Timothy learn that? He said, well, you learned it from your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice. You see, it was passed on. This information was taught to young Timothy. Lois taught her daughter, and then Eunice and Lois helped teach Timothy the ways of God, to respect God. And that's important, to respect God. And that there's some things that are just sacred and special, and they're not just every day. I remember when our boys were little, sometimes we'd sing various songs, we'd be in the car, and, kids like to have fun, and hey, I like to have fun too. And they would start singing silly, you could sing happy birthday, crazy happy birthday to you, and just sing it crazy as you want. And then they would take a Bible song and they started singing. Whoa, let's stop right there. That's a special song. That's sacred. We're not going to play with that one. That's something we don't play around with. When you talk about God and the things of God. There's some things that are sacred and very holy and honorable. Now, you want to sing happy birthday to well, go for it. Just be crazy as you want and have fun. But don't take the things that are sacred. We are to respect God and try to impress it upon our children. We need to learn about godly living and serving God, even from our youth. Something else I think kids need to learn, that is suffering. Our kids like to have fun. I'm a big kid a lot of times. I get in there and have fun. It's like the ladies' class. Kathy wanted to have it at the house. And anyway, Gabby came. She was the only child there. Anyway, I'd gone to the meeting to be out of the house, and I got back around 9. All the ladies were there. They'd stayed after the study for an hour, and, they were having refreshments, etc. And I come walking in, and they said, "Oh, there's Mr. Danny. Well, Gabby's going to have somebody to play with." That's right. I like to hang around kids. I like having fun. I like doing stuff like that. But that's only part of life. There is things about suffering. Paul said in 2 Timothy 3 and verse 12, he says, "Yea, and all that live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution." Yeah, it inevitably happens. Persecution comes. And as Hayden read there in the book of Romans chapter 8, that there's suffering just because we're part of the human family. I remember various times in the Philippines, of course, they're a poor nation, and I don't know, sometimes the brethren kind of go overboard about it, like somehow, I live in America, so therefore I live in utopia. Well, I do live in America, and I do recognize we are well blessed. But you know what? There's suffering everywhere. And sometimes they get the idea like somehow we're almost living in heaven if we live in the United States, which is not true. And sometimes I would sort of kind of talk to them to get them to see that, well, you're not looking at it exactly right. It's like, yeah, but you live in the United States. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we don't have any cemeteries, and we don't have no hospitals, and nobody ever goes to the doctor that lives in America. Then they know, well, they've gone a little bit overboard about it. Yeah, is there suffering? Is it hard? And do they have less than we do? Yeah. But most everybody has food and clothes. Not everybody may have a car. Not everybody might have a motorcycle. But they can eke out a living of where they live. They live in tropical zone. They don't have to worry about cold winters. That's a big chore. Is cold winters, fighting the cold, preventing things from freezing up. Yeah. So it's all relative. But yeah, there is suffering in the world. And we need to teach our children to be mindful of those that are sick and that those that have infirmities, and to be mindful of them. Yeah, we can go to, the playgrounds, and we can go to the King's Island and the Disney Worlds and have fun and all. Nothing wrong with that. But there are things called nursing homes and hospitals and people that are shut in. And we try to take our kids to those things. Let's remember them. Let's do something for them. We would do that for during the Christmas holidays. Make some things. Kathy was good about that, getting the kids to do something for some of the shut-ins, or making a Christmas basket for the various shut-ins and things like that. Try to remember, there are others that have problems in the world, and to be mindful of that. Yeah, it's good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth. Another lesson that we can talk about, and that is to watch your attitude, watch your mouth. And parents need to be in tune with their kids. They need to know the attitude, watch the attitude, examine. Each of your children, even though children are different. We looked at our children, and sometimes one form of discipline, one form of training would be more effective for one as opposed to the other. And sometimes we do very similar things, but we always tried to watch attitude. Sometimes kids need an attitude adjustment. And sometimes even as adults, we need an attitude adjustment. We can kind of get the big head, and we can kind of think that somehow, well, we don't have to do, and, that we're above and beyond. No. In the book of Luke chapter 9, beginning in verse 51, it says, "And it came to pass, when the time was come, that he should be received up, he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem," talking about Jesus. "And he sent messengers before his face, and they went and entered into the villages of the Samaritans to make ready for him. And they did not receive him, because his face was as though he would go to Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, 'Lord, will you that we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elijah did?'" So the attitude is like, man, these Samaritans, they just got bad attitude, and we just need to call down fire. Let's just call them down and destroy them. Verse 55, but he turned and rebuked them and said, you know not what manner of spirit you are of. Your attitude's not exactly what it needs to be. Sometimes that happens with kids. Parents, we have that responsibility to have a little attitude adjustment. Might be a good talking to, might be taking something away, any other form of exhortation, admonition, warning, reprove or rebuke. Watch your mouth. Sometimes we can be smarty mouth. Kids can be that. And that can happen for all of us. There in the book of Matthew chapter 12, Jesus says in verse 33, either make your tree good and its fruit good, or else the tree corrupt and its fruit corrupt. For the tree is known by its fruit. O generation of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure bringeth forth evil things. But I say unto you, for every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give an account thereof in the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Now we need to watch our attitude, our spirit. We need to watch our words. And that goes for young people to kind of keep check on that. And that's going to be when we get out of the home, and when we get married, and we live life, and be among brethren, or at work, or being out in society, down at Walmart, or wherever we might be. We need to have the right attitude. And sometimes, every once in a while, we just need a good attitude adjustment in our lives. Yeah, it's good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth. And one more lesson. And that is, we need to learn to live within our means. That's an important lesson to learn. Over in the book of Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 28, let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands, the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that has need. So we work to provide for ourselves and our needs, not necessarily what we want, but what we actually need. And then we'll have some even to help others if we are careful with what we have. It's real easy, this thing called plastic money, credit cards. There's a passage there in Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 7. It says, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. I remember when Kathy and I first got married, we were young, we didn't have a lot of stuff, and we were setting up our house, and, we didn't have couches and chairs and tables. And so we were over in Glasgow, and we bought some end tables and coffee tables, 90 days, same as cash. Like, well, great. Well, we brought that home. We had some wedding money, so we bought couch and chairs. And we had got a credit card, and so we were buying different stuff for the house. Well, that all seemed good and dandy until the bills come in. I mean, when you take out your wallet and you whip out that credit card and you beep, well, now you insert it. Used to just slide. Well, they used to put it in that tray and run that thing over because it had to raise letters. But now you put that thing in there and you pull it out, remove your card, and you put it in, and you feel like you paid. You didn't pay nothing. You're borrowing from a bank. A bank paid your bill, and now you owe the bank. And see, ultimately that bill comes in. Nothing wrong with credit cards. I use credit cards a lot. In fact, I pay almost everything with credit card. I always pay it off at the end of the month. I don't even remember the last time I ever paid an interest payment on a credit card. I get a lot of points. I've actually flown a lot of places in the world on preaching trips with my air miles. I went up to the Northeast earlier this month just for 5 days just to go through the New England states. Never been in the New England states. I just wanted to go through them on air miles. $11.20 for my airfare, so that was cheap. I've been to the Philippines on air miles. I've been to Colombia. I've been to Ecuador on air miles. There's nothing wrong with it. But you got to learn that, hey, you got to live within your means. It's real easy to just beep, beep, just slide that credit card in. Just feels like you're paying. You're not paying. You're borrowing from a bank who is paying the bill for whatever you're getting. And it's good for children to learn to live within your means. My kids, they would get birthday money or money for Christmas, and they'd want to go shopping. And invariably they wanted to buy some video game or something. And they'd have so much money, say they had $50. Well, they wanted to buy a game that cost $50. Well, there's a thing called taxes. And so they'd be a few dollars short. And they come to me and said, well, can you help me? I don't have enough money for the taxes. I said, we'll get you a different game. And then they go to their mom, and their mom would give them a few dollars, but not me. Because they need to learn. You got to live within your means. Yeah, it might be nice to have that new, shiny new car. We've had a couple of new cars. And I love the smell of a new car. I mean, they're just wonderful. Now, if you got the money to pay it off and just buy it, okay, no problem there. But if you're going to have to get it on installment, are you going to be able to afford the payments every month? Is it going to function within your needs, within your budget? Are you going to be so strapped that you don't have hardly any money for anything? You know, you have to calculate all that. Live within your means. Because listen what the wise man said. It says, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is a servant, is a slave. Literally is a slave. And I remember when I first got married, and we borrowed those various things, 90 days, same as cash, I had credit cards. And it's like, every time I got paid, every week, it's like, I had hardly any money left over. And I just felt like a slave. Maybe I'd want to, I don't have the money. I don't have the money. And it didn't take me long to figure out that, I didn't like that feeling. I kind of like having money in my pocket. It's kind of like my sister was telling about this older fellow up in the country. He said, when I was young, there were a lot of things I wanted, but I couldn't afford them. He said, now that I'm old, he says, there are a lot of things I can afford, but now I don't want them. We think, well, we just got to have this. We got to have this new pair of shoes. We got to have these new jeans. We got to have this. We got to have this car. We got to have whatever it might be, this new shotgun, this new rifle, whatever it might be. Well, if you can afford it, no problem. But hopefully we can learn that when we're young. Even so with children, it's important to learn that lesson while we're young. I mean, it's not every one of these lessons is that not things that all of us have to do? I see that, I got to respect authority. I got to follow rules. And yeah, I got to practice self-control and self-restraint. And yeah, I got to see the value of labor and work. And I have to respect God and serve the Lord. And I have to learn that I live on planet Earth. People talk about some problem. I'll say, well, welcome to planet Earth. Yeah, because we live in a world of suffering. Yeah, I've got to watch my attitude. I've got to watch my mouth. I can get out of control and say things that are kind of hurtful. And yeah, I've got to live within my means. And hopefully, all of us try to do these things. And hopefully the young learn it while you're young, because it'll be a lot easier. It'll go well with you in life to learn these biblical concepts and these biblical principles. All right, we're talking about the idea of remembering God and to remember now your Creator in the days of your youth. That leads us into thinking about the plan of salvation. God's plan of salvation revealed in the Scriptures. And that is, let's see here. We got to hear this good news. So then faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. You men of Israel, hear these words. We hear this good news about Jesus Christ. Would we believe in Jesus, the Son of God? There in Romans chapter 1, verse 16. Paul said, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it's the power of God and salvation to everyone that believeth. Would we be willing to repent? That's the toughie. That's hard. You know why it's hard? Because that means change. People don't like to change. But we got to change. We got to turn from sin. We got to turn to God. And would we be willing to confess our faith before men? That's pretty easy to say, yeah, I believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And that's nothing difficult about that. And then to be baptized, I mean, there's a big pool of water up here, and there's garments back here you can change into. Everything's made convenient for you. And you can do that. That's not too hard to do. But obeying the gospel is a wholehearted commitment. That we're giving our heart and life to Jesus the Christ. And after we're baptized, we rise to walk in newness of life. And then we're endure to the end. Matthew chapter 24 and verse 13. He that endures to the end, the same shall be saved. We just got to hang in there. We just keep on keeping on. And if we do err, we got the second law of pardon described by illustration there in the book of Acts, chapter 8, verse 22. Repent, therefore, of this thy wickedness, and pray God, perhaps the thought of thy heart may be forgiven. God's plan of salvation. We're going to sing this song, The Great Physician. If you need to respond to heaven's invitation, we can help you in any way. You come and let us know while together as we stand and as we sing.
The great physician now is near, the sympathizing Jesus. He speaks the drooping heart to cheer. Oh, hear the voice of Jesus. Sweetest note in seraph song, sweetest name on